accommodation.
So good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the zoning portion of our meeting. Today is February the 19th, 2019. And if you'll please stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, we'll call roll, and then we have some unfinished business from this morning before we get started.
Yes, ma'am. Chairman Stone?
Here.
Vice Chairman Moore?
Here.
Commissioner Bryant?
Here.
Commissioner Gold?
Here.
Commissioner Zally?
Here.
Okay, so this morning we were looking at an alternate date for an April meeting.
Item 11B is a workshop for Marion County Utilities Capital Improvement Plan.
Okay, so.
Two dates I gave you is April 8th in the morning or April 17th in the afternoon.
So I'll bring it to the board to make a decision.
The afternoon on the
17th?
17th?
17?
Yeah.
2 o'clock?
Sure.
What are we doing on the 8th?
What time did you say on the 8th?
It would be in the
9 o'clock.
morning.
That sounds good.
That's good with me.
No.
We need to do 9:30?
I have a standing appointment from 8 to 9 on Monday morning.
Can we do 9:30? 10?
10 is fine.
10?
I mean, I'm good with any of that stuff.
It sounds good.
10 is fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so, no, on the 8th,
April 8th.
April the 8th at 10 a.m. You
Fine.
good?
Yes.
Good. Okay, so April the 8th at 10. Can I get I'll take a motion.
Move for April the 8th at 10 a.m.
Second.
I've got a motion by Commissioner Bryant, second by Commissioner Moore. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. And again, that item was 11B from this morning, request to schedule a workshop to discuss the Marion County's utility capital improvement plan for Madam Clerk. Also, while we were on a lunch break, I did take a few moments because I know it's a concern for all of us, the opioid crisis that we have in our community. I did reach out to the centers to confirm that anyone who is coming into them through the amnesty program is not being turned away. The funds have been covered from OPD, as well as this morning we did secure another $10,000 to the amnesty program through the sheriff. I have been doing some field trips that I have not shared with all of you publicly, and in the process of gathering some information on how other communities are handling this issue. And I've been working with Kurt Broman from the hospital district as well. We have, we're looking at how treatment has been put together, and I do intend to come back at a time certain in the near future to actually host a workshop for us, along with some outside parties that will help us better understand the opioid crisis that we have. So I know, Commissioner Bryant, you were thinking perhaps we may want to get some dollars set aside for that. So I think once we have that workshop would be a good time for us to talk about it, and as we look into the budget for next year, if that's what you're asking us to do. That's
fine. I mean, if nothing else, I'd like to see us do at least the $10,000 match to what the sheriff has done and to what, did the city do that as well?
I don't know about the city.
I did confirm there is no need at this time. I mean, they are taking everyone there. No one is being turned away. They do have the funding at this point in time, and I did confirm there is no one being turned away.
And that is the centers, Commissioner.
That is
The centers though, but aren't there
And
other places?
programs,
There's
yeah.
other programs I think that they're working through. I don't know if everything's going through the centers, but if you don't mind, Madam Chair, let me have another conversation with Chief Graham and then come back and be able to really vocalize exactly what I was thinking.
That's
at our
fine.
next meeting.
I do know that most parties, besides the centers, are, and because I sit on the centers board, if they do not have insurance, they will not take them. So those without insurance go to the centers, and again, no one's being turned away. And they've gone from 6 beds into 15 beds to expand that opportunity to continue to help.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No,
Commissioner Hall.
I was also going to find out the amnesty program, because I read about it during the meeting. I'd like to see what OPD has done, how many that they've made contact with, that they've referred, because what I understand, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on the amnesty program, is it's instead of, if somebody comes there, they don't get arrested, of course, which nobody gets arrested going to for rehab unless they're in possession. But I don't know, I'd like to see if they actually had any cases where somebody had something on them or something that they were able to do what the program says it would, because it started in February 8th of last year. I'd like to see what their success rate is. But if nobody's using it, because I know the centers will take everybody, and they do have a quality.
Well, and what they're doing is from OPD, they're taking them to the centers when they come in. And I wrote down notes when I had my meeting, and unfortunately I don't have those notes right in front of me, so I don't want to misspeak. So, but there was still, it was my impression that there was still, that funding was the greatest need. And that while everyone has these intentions of doing all of these other things are going to take time. And in the meantime, there was a need for some funding. But let me just circle back around and make sure that I heard correctly.
Yeah, absolutely, get clarity. And again, I'm happy to report no one is being turned away from the amnesty program at all at this point in time. And I think that our community is on the cusp of helping determine what would be a good process going forward. And that continuum of care would be very helpful. But again, we'll bring some people who will help us understand that a little bit better so that we can make better decisions before we allocate funds. Yes, Commissioner Zalek?
Madam Chair, I think that's a great idea. Certainly, we give the centers a bunch of money, taxpayers of Marion County do, so.
$1.2 million.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously, if we can focus that, but if you don't mind, I like Monier to reach out also to the Children's Alliance. I know that they've been the one, Dr. Jordan's been leading the heroin task force, and, you know, maybe have a report given back in a summary. I sit on their board, so we do get updates, maybe have Monier just bring that also to the entire board of the updates, how those are going. And then if we choose to have a workshop or something in the future before we probably give out the funding, it's probably a great idea.
Okay, very good. All right,
Yeah.
very good. And in the meantime, it's a problem we know that needs to be addressed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Madam Clerk, if you'll give us proof of publication.
Yes, ma'am. I have proof of publication of legal ad number A000947557, entitled Notice of Intention to Consider Adoption of an Ordinance, published in the Star Banner newspaper on February 4th, 2019.
Very good. Thank you. And so today, as we go through this, we're going to cover various items. I'm going to ask our attorney, Mr. Mentor, to give us the process of how things will go, and then I'll come back with some additional comments. But I would share just housekeeping items for the moment. If you do have a cell phone or any electronic device, if you'll please make sure that it is set to vibrate or turned off. If you do need to have a conversation or you need to take a conversation with a phone, please step out of the auditorium. The acoustics in here carries your voice up here to this podium, so the stage. So, Mr. Mentor.
All right, Madam Chair, ladies and gentlemen, today we've got a rather brief agenda for the planning and zoning items. We have 2 items on consent agenda that are special use permit items. Those will be read out. If anyone is here that has any objection to those 2 items, raise your hand. Or if you even have a question, raise your hand when they're read, and we'll address your concern. If you have no question or objection, the board will make a motion to approve 14A1 and 14A2, the 2 consent agenda items. They'll make one motion to approve both of them. If you're here for one of those items and the board approves the consent agenda, then you're free to leave after that. The next 4 items are all DRC waiver requests. These are usually related to utility issues and whether someone has to connect to a water or wastewater system, or in one case, we've got a appeal from a request for a family division. These are administrative items that the board acts on based on the staff report and its discretion. And then finally, the single planning and zoning item for individual consideration is a request for a reasonable accommodation for a pot-bellied pig in a residential zone. And basically the board utilizes pretty much the same procedure in consideration of these therapy animals that we do for a special use permit. The board considers whether or not it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, if it's consistent with the or compatible with surrounding property, with or without any special conditions, and whether it's consistent with the public interest. There's quite a bit of law that is actually a little fuzzy in this regard regarding these therapy animals. Sometimes the claims can be made by individuals under the Americans with Disabilities Act, whether or not they would be entitled to what's called a reasonable accommodation. So the idea under the Americans with Disabilities Act, if someone has a type of condition and there's a doctor's letter supporting the basis for that, then they can request a reasonable accommodation. The idea is that the accommodation should be no greater or no more, I'll use the word intensive, than is necessary to meet the need of that particular individual. So those are issues that the board will consider. When we have the case called, the applicant will be the first person to come up to the podium and explain why they are making their request. After that, any other people, the surrounding property owners or anyone else, can come up and address the board. Please make your comments fact-based, meaning don't just come up here and say, well, you know, the majority of us neighbors are against this, or the majority are in favor of it. If you have specific factual concerns, you know, if you're concerned about odors, for instance, in the case of the pig, any specific facts and how that is affecting you already or how you believe it might affect you, that's the kind of information that the board needs to hear so that they can properly evaluate the application. So you have one chance to speak. After everyone has spoken, the applicant will be given an opportunity to come back up to the podium and respond to the board regarding any of the issues the neighbors have raised. So please address your comments to the board. We're not going to have audience members and the applicants getting into a dialogue back and forth between themselves. So just address your comments to the board and things will go smoothly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mentor. So we'll start with the agenda and just go down the agenda as it stands. So getting us started on the planning and zoning, I know we have two consent items, but I have people present to speak to both of them. So they will come off of consent, and I'll turn it to you, sir, to start us off.
All right. Kenway Arca Grove Services. This is a case 190203 special use. The applicant name is Christopher Mims, and his request is to park 5 commercial vehicles, to be specific, 2 dump trucks and 3 tractor trailers on A1. The subject property is 12.83 acres with a land use of low density residential, but the zoning is A1 still. And in the past, within a 1 mile radius, there have been 3 similar special uses approved and 1 that was withdrawn, but it wasn't denied. Here's the concept plan. So the trucks would all be lined up in a row. There's gonna be a large garage that they have permits for already, that they're starting to build. There's some site pictures. The driveway. And staff's recommending approval. The current code allows for A1 properties over 10 acres to have 1 commercial vehicle and 2 trailers. And so this request is a little bit more intense than that, but staff believes that the conditions provided can mitigate any adverse impacts. And we've notified 14 people. We had 1 letter of objection, and Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval. And would you like me to go through the conditions, or are we good there? Because they're pretty standard for what we do with commercial vehicles.
Well, let me just see. I'll ask the board if you have any questions for Ken at the moment. If not, we'll bring the applicant forward, if the applicant is with us.
Yep.
Okay, I don't think we have any questions for you at this moment, Ken, so if the applicant would like to come forward. Hello, great. How are you?
My name's Chris Mims, and I'm the one that's applying for the special use permit to continue to park my trucks on my property.
Please give your address.
1045 Northeast 63rd Street, Ocala, 34479.
Thank you, Mr. Mims. So we're going to ask if there's anyone in the audience, and I do have some people who have signed up to speak, so if you'd like to stay close, and then you'll be able to talk again after we have our public comment. Okay? So unless someone has any questions for Mr. Mims at the moment, then I'll go ahead and start.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Let me just ask a couple questions.
Sure, absolutely.
And it might answer some questions that could be coming up.
Please.
So, all right, Mr. Mims, you're running what type of business out of your property there?
I do site work, grading, excavating, stuff like that.
Okay. And how many trips per day would your vehicles be making into and out of the property?
For the majority of the time, we're typically leaving in the morning and we're coming back in the evening.
All right, what time do you leave in the morning?
We meet at 7 o'clock, so they're typically leaving around 7:15, 7:30, and anywhere between 5, 6 o'clock in the evening getting back.
Okay.
Says 15 trips on the application.
Right, but I'm just saying, they get up in the morning, they leave, and then they come back in the evening. It's
Yeah.
not like you've got traffic in and out of there all
Yeah,
day.
occasionally I'd come back, pick up a piece of equipment or a trailer, but for the most part, we're gone for the day working on our job, so.
Are you Monday through Friday, Monday through Saturday?
Monday through Saturday, probably.
Monday through Saturday?
Okay.
All right, those are my questions. Thank you.
Very good. So first person up, I'll just say Keedy is the last name. It looks like Keedy.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Maybe it's Barbara.
Yes, I'm Barbara.
Okay, very good.
Certainly am.
If you'll please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Barbara Keedy, Barbara R. Keedy, at 555 Northeast 63rd Street, Ocala, Florida, 34479.
Very good.
7670. Now, I'm personally am here primarily to support my neighbors and my friends who are on 63rd Street and who will be affected considerably by the extra traffic of the trucks, the burning of the construction materials. That's one of the big things right now that even bothers me, because that stuff kind of drifts in. I don't know where it comes, what's being burned. The number of vehicles on the highway to be increased would be to my disadvantage. And I just think that we should keep it as agricultural as we can, rather than make it a true commercial venture, because who knows what might happen. In another 4 or 5 years, there may be 25 trucks going in and out of there. Who knows? We're growing so fast, and that's really my objection to the property increase of the vehicles and the noise and the burning. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Bye-bye.
Keady. Next up, I believe it's Bev Carlos. Maybe it's Bob. Ah. I'm doing my best to make out the.
I took the doctor's handwriting class.
I see that. If you'll just state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Robert Childs. I live at 1110 Northeast 63rd Street, Ocala, 34479. This has been increasing across the street. There are mounds of gravel and stuff. They burn by the mountain, and there's bulldozers and backhoes besides just trucks. And it isn't just in the morning at 7 o'clock and in the evening at 6. Now, the beeping when any of these things go is drives you nuts, okay? And this is going on not just in the morning, first thing in the evening. There's this thing here that they can go 15 times a day. 15 times a day? Really? You let your employees in the county go home with county vehicles 15 times a day? They're working out of there. It's supposed to be agriculture, not commercial, industrial, big trucks and backhoes. And like I say, they burn piles by the mountain. And they were burning yesterday. It should stay agricultural and quiet. At the other end of the street, there was a big argument a while back about keeping it residential as opposed to even agriculture. If you can remember correctly, on the west end of the street, there was a big hubbub here, and they decided to allow the guy to have a couple animals. It's an agriculture place, not a commercial industrial zone, and to start off with a few trucks, there'll be more. The pole barn, it is not an agriculture place or a neighborhood place. They're turning it into a big industrial type thing, and the trucks aren't there just in the morning and back in the afternoon. They're in and out all day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Childs. Michelle Friedman. Maybe it's Fetterman. And Mr. Fetterman will be behind Mrs. Fetterman. So I've got two podiums if you'd like to come on down, Mr. Fetterman. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Michelle Fetterman. I live at 801 Northeast 63rd Street in Ocala, 34479. I live a very short distance from the MIMS and MIMS Grading and Excavating, LLC. I've given you a copy of their annual report showing their principal place of business as 1045 Northeast 63rd Street. I'm here to express my concerns as to what is happening on our once very quiet street. We moved to Ocala in 2004 to escape South Florida, like so many, and enjoyed our piece of paradise when we were home to the fullest. Our business kept us on the road most of the time, so we were blissfully unaware of the increase in commercial traffic at MIMS property and on our road. Excuse me. We owned a pet products distribution company and traveled in our motorhome with our car trailer to dog shows in the southeast. Because of zoning and covenants on our A1 agricultural property, we had to buy a commercial warehouse to house our materials and business. We have 10 acres, plenty of room for a warehouse, but it's not allowed. And since our retirement in 2016, we are home. Our motorhome sits largely unused at the end of the drive, but we are now totally aware of the loud, old MIMS trucks grinding up 63rd Street. Trucks coming and going day after day, filled with vegetative debris, sand, rock, dirt, and asphalt millings. They dump it on their property, load after load. When those loads must be pushed around to make bigger piles. More noise of front-end loaders and bulldozers and beep, 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 as a gentleman before us mentioned. Then that same material has to be loaded on one of their vehicles to go to a job site, day after day. And I have to mention the fires, raging fires of collected vegetative debris. that burns for days on end, well into the night, further polluting our piece of paradise. Yesterday, I called our zoning department to inquire what zoning I would require if I had a grading and excavating business as my neighbors and handled the materials and had the trucks and the trailers. Cindy said she would investigate and get back to me. She called me a short time later and informed me that I would need M2 heavy commercial zoning.
Ms. Fetterman, your time has expired. If you could please wrap up.
Okay. Basically, we've just got some pictures there for you to look at.
Thank you.
Because we don't want this permit to go through. Unfortunately, the things they're saying that cannot be permitted
Thank
in
you,
the
Ms.
request
Fetterman.
is they're still already doing.
Okay. Mr. Fetterman?
I noticed the pictures that you all have there. That doesn't half represent what's on that property right now.
And Mr. Fetterman, your address is the same as your...
801 Northeast 63rd Street.
Thank you.
One house away. The other thing I'd like to mention is the sign that declared that this was coming up. Instead of being perpendicular to the road where you could see it, was up against their fence, parallel to the road. And now it's not even there. I don't even know how long it was there, but we go up and down that road all the time. Never saw it. That's not right. That's deceit. We object to this. This is commercial, and LLC business does not belong in an agricultural zone. It's M2. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Fetterman. Okay, do we have anyone else in the audience who would like to speak to this particular? Please come forward if you do. If you'd like to speak on this particular item. We have two podiums, so while she's coming, if there is anyone else wishing to speak, please come forward to the other podium. Yes, ma'am. Your name and address for the record.
Mary Luster, 721 Northeast 63rd Street, Ocala 34479. We moved to Ocala a couple years ago from Orlando, and I'm in the real estate business and have been for 30 years. And when you have this type of activity going on in your neighborhood, it certainly takes a toll on what the real estate values are. People come there to live, to have their horses, and to have the quiet and peaceful time of their home life. And agriculture is for home life as well as for having your personal life of animals and horses and some cattle, but not day in and day out of semi-trucks, large vehicles coming up and down your street. We even have potholes in our street. Someone's filling them. I don't think it's the county, but someone's aware of what's going on there, and they're filling the holes on our street. So I think it's really important that we look at this and make sure that it's for the good of everyone, not just for one person. I understand someone has to have a job and they are contributing to society by being employed, but it needs to be in the right location. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lester. Do we have anyone else in the audience wishing to speak to this item? If not, then I'll bring it back to the applicant. Is there, please come forward. Okay, if you'd like to come forward, I can't take any comments from the audience, but if anyone else would like to speak to this, you must come forward and give your name and address for the record. And if there's anyone else who would like to speak to this item, I invite you to come forward now. Yes, sir. Your name and address for the record.
Clayton Mims. I'm residing at 1055 Northeast 63rd Street.
Hello, Mr. Mims.
Okay. I was born and raised on that road. I remember it was dirt. From what I understand, the paperwork that was sent out to people within 300 feet of that property, okay? If I had known that these other people were allowed to come in and speak, I have dozens of other people who would come in favor of my son's 5 trucks being parked there. Now, this gentleman here who spoke a minute ago, I know him, I knew his family, I guess, because I built the home across the street. And as far as the lady who spoke about their trailer, is a very large, extremely large motorhome with a trailer, big, large trailer behind it. It's not something small. I see it go in and out all the time. I don't care, I don't know where her warehouse is or whatever, but her trailer sits on that property along with her trailer. That motorhome does. And the other lady who spoke about, well, I'm not sure where they live, but if we're not allowed, if I'd have been allowed to know that my son could have had other people here, we have a number on both sides of the street, have no opposition to this whatsoever.
Well, I will share with you, Mr. Mims, we do have some letters in support of your son as it is, and those are already in on the record. And
They live within 300 feet of the property.
Thank you.
And there are many others who don't, who would not have a problem with it.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone else wishing to speak? At this point, then, I'll bring it back. I'm sorry. Yes, Mr. Minter.
Madam Chair, I wanted to bring up a couple of things. One is regarding the condition number 7, if the board goes along with this, just to avoid a potential problem in the future where it says, quote, maximum number of trips per day shall be 15. So I want to make sure that that doesn't, nobody could say that that's 15 times each one of the 5 trucks. So I want to make sure we clarify that. It's probably not your intent, but I want to make sure.
It was 15 total.
15 total?
Yeah.
And
And that came from the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Okay. And then the other thing is the package indicates that there is a pending code enforcement case, and that one of the issues in the code enforcement case has to do with this burning issue, and apparently that's not being addressed in this application. So I was going to raise the question whether that could be resolved as a condition of this application.
I think that's an excellent point, and one that I did pick up and see no comments on. So, Mr. Martzoff, are you aware of where we stand with that?
I was not aware of any of this. We didn't hear from anybody at the P&Z, and we didn't hear from anybody that this was going on. I was unaware that code enforcement had anything other than the parking of commercial vehicles, because that's all that's in the report. The only thing that they applied for was parking 5 vehicles. None of that other stuff would be allowed. Not the storing of materials, not the burning, certainly not the burning. So those would be code enforcement actions immediately. In fact, if you haul more than 500 pounds on your property, it's felony dumping. And that's what we would seek to.
Well, actually, under the heading request, it says there's an existing open code enforcement case on this property for storing vegetative debris, burning, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
So that's in the.
It's all lumped together, three different violations there.
Yep. And none of that was witnessed by either the planner that went out there, and if Sam Lucky picked that up in the code enforcement, I was unaware of it. So we would definitely not be recommending approval of this application if those activities are going on.
Mr. Martzoff, did you get copies of the photos that we've been provided?
No.
Okay.
We can get it from the clerk.
Okay, because there are piles of debris that are on this property.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I would just urge the folks, we need to see that being delivered to the property. And we can take it. We have this going on all over the county. It's a real problem.
Commissioner Zalek, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
No, I'll just wait for the applicant to come back up so I can ask.
Okay. So.
I do have a question.
Okay, yes.
Quick, either probably Sam. What's the concrete company, what's their, next door to them, what's their zoning, or is that a special use permit?
They have a special use permit.
Is it? Okay, thanks.
It's A1.
All right.
Do they have a special use permit? Sam?
No.
Well, you need to go.
Thought that I read it
You need to
right
go
here.
get them, tell them to come before the board as well. Because they can't be doing that either.
I thought that I read somewhere that they did, maybe they don't.
I mean, if they don't have a permit, somebody needs to go.
Concrete, masonry,
Contract.
Just own the property.
They're contractors, yeah.
It doesn't matter.
They might be.
You can't do that there.
Okay.
On A1.
So,
I'm told Sammy's working that case as well, so, Mr. Lucky.
okay, so we're in the process of cleaning up the neighborhood.
Cleaning up the neighborhood, yes, ma'am.
We're in the process of cleaning up the neighborhood with
Okay.
code enforcements right now.
I just want to make sure.
Okay.
You said Sam, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Sam Lucky has a case on them too?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
So, Mr. Mims, would you like to come back up?
Yes, ma'am.
And think you heard some of the complaints, and
Yes, ma'am.
we'd also like to know the status of the outstanding code violations that you have.
Yes, ma'am, has been taken care of a while ago. There is no vegetative debris. It was all burnt up and is gone. And in regards to the burning he was talking about the other day, that was my brother on his property, actually took some trees down and was burning debris on his own property, just like some of these same neighbors do. I have many times have smoke been coming from their property as well, cleaning up tree debris and limbs, and I understand, as far as I know, if you got a burn permit, you're allowed to do that in the county. But as far as anything being hauled in for tree debris and being burned up, that has all been, it's gone.
So you have not done it, or you burnt it all up? And
It's done. We haven't done that, and Mr. Lucky's been back out, took pictures.
But you did do it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, in the past we did. But that has been taken care of, that violation, and we have not been doing that. So as far as the pile, I do have an asphalt milling pile there, which I intend to put in the barn. I just have not got a chance to finish that project. And we do have some topsoil stuff that we're gonna be spreading and filling in some low spots and reseeding. But we're not hauling any of the material out, selling it or anything like that right now. We're just.
So do you have receipts where you bought the topsoil from, or the millings?
No, I hauled it off some projects that I did.
So you
I'm gonna
haul it
utilize
off
it as my.
job sites, from
Yes.
your job sites to your house?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
To use on my property. So,
And you understand you can't do that anymore.
I can't haul dirt to my own property and use it?
Well, you can't haul dirt to your own property and make piles of debris for future use. I mean,
It can't be used as a stockpile.
no, you can't use your
You can't
property as a
stockpile it.
stockpile.
Yeah, well, we plan on spreading it out on our property
How soon do you plan on spreading it out?
as soon as I get to it, I guess.
Okay.
I'm working on the weekends trying to clean up and do stuff.
And I'm not trying to
get
give,
it.
I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I just want to make sure that if your special use permit is approved today, that you understand the
Oh, yes,
conditions
ma'am.
and that you understand what's allowable and what's not allowable per your zoning.
ma'am.
Because all that's got to happen is for one of your neighbors to call and complain, and then your special use permit gets brought back before this board,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
it becomes in jeopardy. So that's why I'm having this discussion with you.
Oh, yeah, I understand.
May I also ask, are you dumping material in the power easement? It looks
We
like
do
there's a
have
bunch of material in there.
Well, I don't know how old those pictures are, but we put some topsoil in there, some of the low spots, and spreading it out, but that easement there is part of my property, and I have talked to them about not having any stockpiles, but anything else is outside of the power line there.
So, Mr. Mims, they also had some issues with backhoes and bulldozers, so the noise that produces. So the backhoes and bulldozers, are those part of your business?
Ma'am.
And so the purpose that you've been using them is to spread your piles?
Yes, ma'am, on my property, yeah.
Is it to load any of your trucks as well?
No, ma'am, we're not loading it up to haul it out, we're just using it on my property. If we have trees come down, as far as I know, I'm allowed to use my equipment to clean up my property and stuff like that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
No, we're not hauling the loads out or anything. I did haul some in, I have a stockpile there for, like I said, to utilize for my barn, my projects, and that's basically where we're at right now. We're not hauling tree debris in there and burning it or anything like that. That pile's been cleaned up and graded out, so.
Okay, so Commissioners, do you have any other questions? I do have a question. One more is, did I read on here that you've been parking your commercial vehicles there since 2005?
Yes, ma'am.
Without any sort of permitting?
Yes, ma'am.
It's not been an issue until recently?
No, ma'am.
Have you added, when have you added, have you always had 5 or 6 trucks and the
No,
payloaders?
I started out with a couple trucks.
Right.
And I've recently, in the last
Right.
3 or 4 or 5 years, I've gained a
Right.
couple more trucks.
That's what I thought.
Uh,
Okay.
So this, have you looked at the conditions of the special use permit that limits the number of trips to 15 as a total for all of your trucks per day? And the various other requirements that is included in that, should it be approved?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Which includes putting some boundaries up to hide some of that you have, the trucks
Yeah.
to,
Well, currently, where they're located on the property, I don't know if you can see it through the pictures, but it's actually behind my family member's house, so it's not even really that visible from the road unless you're way off from a distance. But if we need to put, you know, privacy fence, or, you know, we planned on planting some oak trees right down the property line there, some to help hide it.
well, there are some setbacks that are in here, including the east, south, and west boundaries of the parking area shall have a solid opaque privacy fence with minimum of 6-foot height or vegetative buffer consisting of 3 shade trees. I mean,
Yes,
it's very specific.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have seen those requirements. Do you have any issues with adhering to any of those
No, ma'am.
special? Okay. Okay. So bring it back to the board. Any additional comments, questions?
If we approve it, we should add, for number 13, no burning, period, on site. Number 14, no storing of any materials, you know, of, like all this, stuff that we see in those pictures, the stockpiles.
No
So-
stockpiling.
Yeah, so that way,
And
and
I'm-
then no burning, because, you know, that seemed like what was one of the main objections from the neighbors.
You can't.
Well,
With all due respect,
personal.
Commissioner, you can't. So let's just make sure we do this right.
Right.
You can't stop them from burning material that comes from their property.
Right, but you
Okay?
can, my point
You
is.
just can't
the
bring in
stuff-
any material.
Exactly, bring in
Period,
materials to
really.
burn.
Unless you're, you know, doing something. And this becomes the tricky part. So agricultural property is very tricky because you can put up a pole barn, but technically you can't put any piece of equipment that you use in it that's not used on your farm, right? You can put a tractor in it, but you can't put your boat in it, you can't put your RV in it, you can't put your payloader in it, your dump truck in it, any of those things, because those are all used for commercial use. So you can't go in there, build a pole barn, say it's agricultural, not get any permits for it, and then use it for commercial use, right? And so this is where people can get confused very much. Our special use process is really not used for what your business is doing today, sir. Our special use permit for a truck is for typically a long-haul trucker that's coming in for the weekend, 2 times a month. Maybe one owner-operator dump truck that comes in and uses his dump truck to go back and forth to work, you know, one at a time. This is not really for 5 or 6 or 2 or 3 employees to come to work every day at your piece of agricultural house and then leave there and for you to go out and do grading work. Now, you can run, unfortunately for your neighbors, you can run your payloader all day long if you're sowing seed, getting it ready for head of cattle, you know, doing all that kind of stuff, an agricultural property. But that is not what you're using it for. Quite frankly, you need a contractor's yard. You've grown, you've been successful, and you probably need to move off this property, you know, and park one truck here for you. But you're running your business, a commercial business that is not producing agricultural product on a piece of agricultural land and trying to use it as the ability to park that equipment there when nobody else can do that. So for those reasons, Commissioner, I'll vote for denial.
So do I have a motion to deny?
I have to
With a, I have a motion to deny from Commissioner Zalek, second by Commissioner Moore.
Discussion.
And discussion.
Okay, so, we've had things like this come before us
Sure.
before
Give
in the
them some
past.
time.
And I think that if we're going to make that decision, which is going to obviously affect his business.
Sure.
I would prefer for us to vote for approval for a limited amount of time to give him an opportunity to find somewhere else to run his business
We
out
can
of.
just give them a certain amount of time.
Like 90 days.
I mean, whatever you want to do.
Well, I mean, I think in all fairness, we never, ever want to take somebody's
No.
Exactly.
ability.
I'm not looking to put them out of business, but
No.
unfortunately, you've grown past, you know, 1 or 2 dump trucks at your place or something like that. And, you know, I mean, if your equipment was there for your property and agricultural production, that's one thing. That's not what it's there for. So,
So Commissioner
Whatever
Zalek,
you-
would
whatever-
you like to amend your motion to include a
sure,
timeline?
whatever time Commissioner Bryant wants.
Too long. 180
Well, you gotta
days?
think about this now, before we start deciding on a timeline. You gotta think about, he's gotta identify a piece of property that he can do this on. He's gotta either get it under contract. That's gonna take some time. I think
180
a
days, 6
reasonable
months?
amount of time is 6
And some
months.
money.
6 months.
I think 6
Yeah,
months is a
you need at least 6
reasonable
months to
amount of
probably do
time.
that. Okay.
Okay, so the
My
motion
motion
has,
includes 6 months
Okay, the motion I had was to deny.
to deny, but
But
allow
allow
him 6 months to move this equipment off the property.
I think,
with a second by Commissioner Moore.
I think to make it cleaner, you should probably withdraw your motions and make the motion for approval for the 6 months. That's just my.
Mr. Attorney, what do you need? You're the one that has to prosecute if not, so tell us how you want it.
Yeah, I think that's good to approve.
To
it
approve for 6 months?
and,
Okay.
But it's gonna expire automatically. in 6
Automatically.
months.
Correct.
Right. Well, then that.
And you'll become in code of violation and they'll start the process if you don't.
So I have a motion to approve for 6 months, with two additional conditions to include no burning of outside material as well as no stockpiling of materials on the property. And that motion is made by Commissioner Zalek with a second by Commissioner Moore. And again, that's for 180 days only. Any further discussion?
Do you still want him to do the buffer for 180 days?
No, no, you don't have to do anything, you just has to find
So we
somewhere
need
else
to
for it.
adjust all the conditions.
So the conditions
So we
will.
do need to adjust the conditions if we're gonna approve it.
I do have a comment before we do this.
Okay,
And,
so before we
making
take
this-
a vote-
Making this more complicated, but it's no burning. He's allowed to burn.
No burning of
burning
outside material.
Outside materials,
Yeah,
okay.
okay,
All
that
right.
he brings in from the outside.
Right, and you're not allowed to bring a bunch of material in and stockpile it unless he's gonna spread it.
Yeah.
You can do that.
Got it?
I
Okay.
have one other question.
Yes,
Going back to the chronology that Commissioner Zalek raised of the history of this man's operation, does the board want all 5 of these vehicles removed after 6 months, or are you willing to have?
By
him-
right, he's allowed to have one on there.
He's allowed his.
That's
On
why-
ag, you're allowed 1 commercial vehicle.
Yeah.
1 and 2 trailers, I believe.
1 commercial vehicle, 2 trailers. He's allowed that by right.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
I believe that's true.
Yes.
But the
Okay.
other equipment and things need to be in use of agricultural process, right?
Right, that would not extend to running a business or doing any of those other things.
Correct. All right,
Mr. Mims, are you clear on all of this?
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Clerk,
Okay,
you good?
So I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Mims, and we're happy you're so prosperous.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I do have one question also. I know you mentioned my neighbor there, Mr. Millar. He's basically doing the same exact thing and has equipment, running his concrete business out. Equipment, dump trucks also.
Sure.
The one that
Thank
started
you.
this whole
He'll,
thing.
he'll be before us here shortly, I'm guessing.
Yeah, as long as it's, whatever's
We'll
good
keep
for
it
me,
fair.
good for him and
Yes, sir.
everybody else, so.
Everybody,
wanna make
everybody needs to
sure-
be held to the same standard, sir.
Exactly.
Yes, sir.
I agree. And we try to give the reason for the special use permit for the dump truck. I mean, listen, I've got equipment. I've got dumpsters. I can't park that in my yard, right? At a certain point, your business grows past, a truck and hauling, and I get it. Commissioner Stone has the same bit. They gotta have a commercial business and a commercial piece of property in a contractor's yard is what you're growing into.
Maybe you can
So-
get together with Mr. Millar and y'all can come up with something.
hardly.
You can have a
Yeah,
joint
not hardly.
venture.
I don't care ever see him again.
Okay.
Okay, all right.
It was just a thought.
Y'all have a good day.
Yes,
You
sir.
Thank
too.
you.
Okay, 14A2.
All right, 14A2 is 190204 SU. It's a special use permit for a 100-foot tall observation tower. This is an old fire tower, like we used to have all over the county. We still have one in Candler, right there on top of the hill on C-25. It's the exact same tower, to be honest with you. So the reason for the special use permit is any structures over 50 feet would require the special use permit, and this one being 100 requires it.
Excuse me, if you could please take your conversations outside of the auditorium? Thank you.
I can't hear a word you're saying.
If you could repeat yourself.
Try
please.
again, please,
Sure.
Sam.
Mr. Brown has at least 87 acres in his total holdings there. This tower request is on the front 18-acre piece. It just happens to be the way that the properties broke out. Mr. Brown intends to keep the entire property together. This is for recreational use only. Got it up in Georgia. Disassembled it, brought it here, and set it up. Wants to set it up for his own recreational purposes. There is a 550-foot communication tower located right next door where the hand is there, and that is for cellular communication. It has a lot of antennas on it. This is up next to the Greenway. There's nothing, no neighbors other than the Greenway to the west. The neighbor to the east, as I said, already has a 550-foot tower. We didn't. We sent to 10 property owners surrounding there. Nobody was in opposition, and we have conditions on there that keeps it from being commercial or having any antennas on it or anything else. And Mr. Brown is here.
No electric will be run to this? No electric?
That's correct.
Okay, very good. So, Mr. Brown, would you like to come forward?
I think it's just an automatic no.
Is this like an American Picker story? Like you found some tower up in Georgia?
Joe C. Brown, 3110 Southeast 95th Street. Y'all want to know what I'm doing?
Yes.
What are you up to here?
That's a hell of a hunting blind.
Well, I don't know.
I think he's using
Please
it.
scratch that from the record.
I think he's using it for exercise and running up and
Oh
down.
yeah, I'm sure that's what.
Actually, that's a lot of that is the truth. I certainly need it. I just thought it would be neat to have. I did spend 2 summers in one with my uncle in Fort McCoy, and they're just neat. And this opportunity came up, so it's quite an ordeal to move a tower. I'm learning that. But nonetheless, as far as the neighbors are concerned, I didn't even know I'd be standing here. But my farm, I actually have about 130 acres. It's in different entities, but I control all of it. So I do have about 130 acres. I do have a extended lease where the tower is for the ag rights. I run cattle on that 20 acres, so somewhat I control that as well. I keep it fenced, keep it mowed, etc. So I do have about 150 acres there. To the west, I have 7/8 of a mile of frontage of the greenways and the riding trails and what have you, which is neat. To the south central is a subdivision which is pretty much hidden. I mean, it may see the top of it. I forget the name of the subdivision with the Greenway Crossings. Okay. And then as you move to the east is the high school, which my farm abuts the high school, and also 467. Nobody will really see it, I mean, unless you really look. I'm 4th generation on that farm. My kids are 5th generation. Just something kind of neat, totally for recreation.
Very good, Mr. Brown.
So you own everything except for a couple things, right?
Silver Springs Acres, Joe Brown, Lisa Brown, profit sharing, that configuration.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I mean, most of that is.
Right, from the high school, the road behind the school actually protrudes into the farm, and I own on both sides of that road, and I thought about approaching y'all and maybe having different subject, but having that cut off, they go back there and they dump and they park, and I clean it up and the county cleans it up, but that's another deal. But that road does go in the middle of the farm, and the farm's on both sides to the west and the east of the road behind the school.
Okay, Commissioner Bryant.
Joe, do you live out there?
57 years.
Okay, all right, and you're gated?
Say again?
I said you're gated? Like is there a gate into your property?
I have 6-foot fence around the entire farm.
I couldn't remember.
But I don't, I mean, my driveway's not.
Your
you don't have
driveway's
to,
not?
You don't have to open and close the gate to get in and out. I've thought about it.
Yeah, he wouldn't want to do that.
Be too much work.
You have to have one of those mules or something.
We do have one person who signed up to speak on this, so.
So what's it for, Joe?
Just purely fun, and honest to goodness, Kathy's right. I try to take myself up and down that 3 or 4 times a week. I think it'd be a neat place to go.
It's like a
talk
place of
with your
solitude.
friends, maybe have a cold beer, kind of watch the animals. Do have lots and lots of animals. I got about 40 cows, 60 or 70 goats. I've got emus, just had babies yesterday, so I got 5 more baby emus.
cool.
But I got about 15 emus, got donkeys, got horses, got ponies, got rabbits, got chickens, lots of critters. I'm sure I left a few out.
Okay, I'm gonna ask and I hate to even ask this question, but in today's world, site-wise, if somebody's up in that tower, what can they see as far as the school is concerned?
From the school, I'm not sure. They can take a measuring tool and measure it if I had to guess, because the farm is busted up in 660s. I would say that it's probably a little over a half a mile, maybe slightly more than a half a mile from the school. I took my son's drone. This is not the best place to put it. It was just the most convenient, and I figured if there was opposition, it would be from the middle upper end class behind me, where they have the big houses and what have you. So I did elect to put it there, so it's a little bit more hidden. It's actually 22 feet lower there.
Okay. And like I said, I hate to ask that question, but from
I would say probably
a
just
safety
over a half a mile, right
standpoint,
at a half a mile.
I
That'd be a
wouldn't
pretty
want
good
us
shot.
to.
It's
huh?
over 2,000 feet.
Okay,
Yeah,
all
that'd
right.
be a pretty good shot.
Well,
It'd be an expert military sniper.
One
not a
quick
sniper.
question.
Commissioner Gold?
I wasn't thinking you were, but that's why I asked you if your property
Yeah, you're
was
not a
gated.
sniper, are you, Joe?
No, not a
No.
sniper.
And that's why I asked you if your property was gated, you know?
Yeah, and it's fenced. I mean, the property, I have 5 children there on the farm. Actually, one's in college, but we're there. My wife is a full-time
And it-
housewife, and she's there full-time. We don't.
If I could add, where the tower is, it's fenced, so the gate only gets you into where the office is.
Oh, no, you'd be
The
trusted. If you were
tower's
where the
within
tower
the
was,
fence.
you would have to actually go through 2 fences.
That's what I
And then
wanna
you
know.
would be
Okay.
trespassing. It's not
Okay.
readily accessible to the public.
Okay.
Absolutely. I would be,
That's,
I
that,
would be feared.
that's
Farm
what I
Bureau,
wanted
too.
to know.
Thank you.
Okay,
That's good.
thank you.
Commissioner Gold?
And just one quick question on it. The fire towers, they usually have a lock on the ladder to go up or some type of thing to keep, if somebody come on the property and went to climb it up, I don't know if this one does or not, but if you've seen the others where they either have something that keeps you from going up it, just a barrier, does this one have it?
This
Or-
one does not, but I plan on putting a gate there where you can't just walk in it. I
That's
mean, so
perfect.
people.
Because
you know,
that's the same as any of the towers, like the 550-foot tower and all them probably have a fence around it or something like that.
They
so-
do.
Yes, sir. That's it. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so, Mr. Shear, Doug Shear is in the audience, and I think he would like to speak to this topic. So, Mr. Brown, we may need you back here, or we will in a moment.
Doug Shear, 2301 Southeast 85th Street. Well, Commissioner Bryant brought up one of my points. I mean, an expert sniper from that could have a view. I don't think I thought it was a little closer than 2,000, but it's manageable for a sniper. But also the privacy issue, where he put it, kept all the people in Greenway crossings that have $500,000 homes from getting notices. So none of them know that someone's going to be able to look right down into their backyard. I just think in this age of privacy, you know, they move out in the country and stuff, they're not expecting a 100-foot tower to be there to be able to watch what they're doing in their swimming pools and everything else. But I also think the kids going to school are a lot of them drive down 95th Street, they're gonna see this. It's like a water tower, it's tempting. So if we let it go, we need to make sure there is security on it, because it'll be very tempting to a bunch of high school kids that see it all the time to wanna climb up it, just like we did as kids on fire towers when we weren't supposed to. So I'm just saying, I think we need to put a few restrictions on it if you do allow it. I don't think it belongs in that area, but that's y'all's decision.
Thank you, Mr. Shear. Do we have anyone else in the audience that would like to speak on this issue? If not, then, Mr. Brown, if you'd like to come back up.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Commissioner Gold with a second by Commissioner Moore to approve, and there are some special use permits, requirements out here. Mr. Brown, you've already seen them?
Conditions.
The conditions?
I have.
Okay, and you're good with those?
I am.
Okay, very good. I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
All right,
Very
thank
good.
you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Nice to see you. Okay, I'll give them a moment to leave before we go on. Next, we will go through our DRC waiver request and public hearings. So, first one up is 14B1. Not sure who's going to be presenting on that.
Samuel,
Yes.
you ready?
Yes, sir. I was
14B1.
trying to get the picture, yeah, leave that one there. Okay, this is a request to uphold DRC's denial recommendation for family division for Edward and Paul Ruggles. This property's located in northeast Marion County. I have up on the screen here the massive floodplain that's associated with Black Sink Prairie, which we've had numerous problems with, particularly this past summer with the rains. And they're well within that floodplain. It's 3.4 acres. So subdividing this property has the potential to really double the improvements on the property. There are already 2 houses that each brother would be taking possession of one of, and that particular zoning would allow you to have a second house. So there is the potential for extra development on there that we wouldn't want in the floodplain. And also there is a disparity between the size of that lot and the lots in the immediate vicinity. They're all 3 acres or larger in size, and this would create 2 1.5 acre pieces. So for those reasons, DRC recommended denial, and otherwise the property is eligible for family divisions, and they did go through the process and bring it to DRC.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mortzoff. Do we have the applicant with us today? If you'll please come down. Mr. Ruggles? Yes, ma'am. Very good. If you'll please give your name and address for the record and give us some detail on what you're doing here.
Yes, ma'am. My name's Edward Ruggles. I live at 15505 Northeast 47th Ave, Citrus, Florida 32113. Yeah, basically, my mom passed away about 3 years ago, and I kind of was with her during the last couple of months of her life, helping her along. Anyway, in her gratitude, she gave me her half interest in the property. We bought that as a family back in 1999. So anyway, we like it out there. It's very quiet and very country. When we bought it, there was 2 trailers on the property and a barn, and it has a canal that runs right into the property. Anyway, the point is, I'm trying to understand, trying to wrap my head around it. There's houses already out there. Many of them within the other map that he showed about the floodplain. I just don't see how it would cause any difference. Thank you. How it would cause any difference if there's already 2 trailers on there. One would be removed, and it would just go to a different part of the property. And if, for that matter, if the footprint was a little too much, the barn is not necessary. We can remove the barn. It's just it also affects my credit, my brother's credit, our ability to borrow money. It affects our cost of insurance and everything along those lines. I just think it's also kind of a circumstantial thing. It's not like we moved there with the intention of they don't allow us to do this, because we had no clue that this would even come up. We didn't move there and say, well, let's do this, and then we'll, before you die or after you die, we'll give the property to them so we can go ahead and divide it. Maybe they have a variance or something that they'll say, well, under these circumstances, you didn't move there to do that, and it's your property. We're going to go ahead and waive that, only because, again, the footprint, I don't see the difference. I'm sure somebody does, but I don't see the difference. If I'm just moving one trailer over to another spot, I don't get it. Keeps us from also getting loans to improve the property. I only know this from trying to get loans and insurance. I've had insurance companies call me back and say, well, you're not on the deed. Once you're on the deed, now they're like, well, yeah, but this isn't your half. Technically, you own half of it, but we can't do anything singularly. My brother, glad you brought up the opioid crisis. My brother has rheumatoid arthritis. He's been crippled for almost 12 years. And he takes opioids, and he's in a fetal position. He can't get out of bed. So we can't do anything. He can't get a loan. to improve his living conditions. So it's not so much being selfish and uncaring about being a good neighbor. It's just, it would make our life so much more easier and flow in the direction that we had planned it to begin with.
And he's not willing to sell you the half interest?
No, sir, he wants to stay there. That's the whole thing. We've been offered, people have offered to buy it from us before. Ups and Downs Farm moved in the road right beside us and bought everybody back behind us. Everybody. There's like 2 houses back there that doesn't belong. He wanted to buy us out. We liked it. That's why we moved there, again, 20 years ago.
Okay. Let's see if we have anyone in the audience who would like to speak on this item. Is there anyone present who would like to come forward and speak on this item? I don't think we have anyone present to talk about the issue. So currently, go ahead. I'm sorry, Commissioner Bryant.
I've got a question for staff when we get back.
Okay. So currently, there is a mobile home on the property.
2 of them.
There's 2.
Yes, ma'am.
And your brother's in one, you're in the other.
Yes, ma'am.
You're looking to divide it.
Yes, ma'am.
So that you can do some financing.
Yes, ma'am.
And you've been there how many years?
20 years, ma'am.
So you know about the flooding.
Yes, ma'am.
It gets pretty wet out there.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I got another question for the
Yeah.
applicant. Now, you said you were gonna move one of the mobile homes to another piece of property?
We just disassemble it or get rid of it and put another one over on the other opposite corner.
Get another one.
They're just moving the one
Okay.
on they're
Just trying
they're just separating
Yes, sir.
on the different sides of that piece of
Yes, sir.
property if you got the division.
Yes, sir. So then we want each trailer would have their own sewage, their own electric, their own everything.
Okay.
And that's a difficult thing now. And it's just creating a lot of problems that you can't resolve any other way.
Okay.
Well, your insurance problem could also be that, I mean, people have a hard time. I mean, I know a lot of folks out here, especially right now while it's wet, their insurance companies are not writing a whole lot of insurance.
Yeah,
With the
it's,
flooding.
mine was, I was, of course, shopping around, trying to find a lower rate. And they come back and said, well, if you can show us a document that you're owning this, then we can do something. But with the 2 of us together, it's just too complicated.
So as it stands right now, both of you own the whole thing as tenants in common or as joint owners?
It's just a deed, yes, sir, I believe that's what it is, yeah, we're both half owner, in the property, period.
Joint tenants or tenants in common?
Just, there's no division, no nothing, it's just, there you go.
So as it stands right now, if either one of you died, then the survivor would own the whole thing?
No, sir, it's not, no, sir, go to his relatives.
Oh, really?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir, that's kinda how, it was my mother's plan originally to give it to me, but because the state of Florida does not authorize, or does not recognize video wills, that just, again, it just kept knocking us backwards and backwards and backwards. So it's been 3 long years just to get this far.
Sam, what was DRC's?
It was primarily the floodplain
Primarily
and the
floodplain.
inconsistencies with the surrounding property sizes.
Even though it is an irregular piece
Yeah,
that could be easily.
Basically already 2 residences.
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner, I think the floodplain, and if you divide the property, they would be allowed to
There'd be a lot
add
more, that's the
another
problem.
residential. So that could be a condition to divide it and allow only the 2 trailers that they exist, one
Or
on
2
each property.
residences.
So
2
they-
residences, one on each property, and no additional, like guest house or anything else.
So moved.
Can we divide and, wait, hold on, can we do that though? Can we divide and put that on does that go on the deed? Would we how would we file that exactly?
It'll have to be a condition of this waiver, so it'll exist in the computer on the address request number, on
Okay.
everything that goes forward, hopefully. And we'd be able to track it that way. You'll remember.
Yeah, but that sounds like it could be a future problem.
Yeah,
when
somebody's gonna go
somebody
pull a
goes to
building
sell
permit,
it
no one's
and
gonna
they
know.
don't disclose that, and they don't
They
go to
would,
the
it would be in the
building
computer. Every time you
It
go to
would
do
be on
something in
the
the
deed.
computer, it's attached to that ARN number.
But does it come up in a title search?
No.
Okay, so that's just not even realistic. Look, let's just move to divide. I move for approval of the division.
Second.
So we've got approval for dividing the family division by Commissioner Bryant, second by Commissioner Moore. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Thank you
Yes,
all
sir.
very much. Thank you.
All the
very
best, Mr. Ruggles.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
Enjoy your new homestead.
Thank you.
Okay, taking us to 14B3.
This is the first of a couple of utility waivers. This was, again, DRC recommend denial, and we also recommended in our motion of this item that denial be upheld for a water connection for a new single-family residence in Silver Spring Shores. This is within the 400 feet.
You doing two
I
or three?
think I did. I skipped 14B2, excuse me. So let's go back and stay in order. 14B2. My apologies. My notes pushed me forward. Thank you for keeping me straight.
They're still back to back.
Yeah.
That's the one I have.
14B2. You've
Right.
given us details, water connection.
Within 400 feet. And Jody's here to tell us about it.
Yes. We'll have him come forward. Welcome to the arena.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Madam Chair, Commissioners, County Administrator. As Sam explained, we do have an applicant that
Mr.
is,
Kirkpatrick, if you'll just give your full name for the clerk.
I'm sorry, for the record, Jody Kirkman, Environmental Services Director. The applicant has come forward requesting a waiver to install water to this property. As you can see with the aerial, the property is within the 400 feet rule established by this commission, or 352 feet from our existing service. Again, for the record, I'd like to at least put some facts out there. This applicant has come across saying that we requested a 12-inch extension. In fact, we did a 6-inch, or requesting a 6-inch extension for a total of 453 feet, which would take him to his extreme property corner of the frontage. This commission in the past basically has also directed staff in these cases to do the engineering. So the engineering would be zero cost. We also had vendors within the utilities department, pre-approved vendors that gave us a list, an a la carte list, if you will, for materials. Staff did evaluate that, and the cost for this project, with the footages I explained earlier, was just a little less than $15,500. The applicant also made reference of over $6,000 for capacity fees. That is actually water and sewer. In this case, it would be water only, or $1,600. So when we kind of put everything together, we're about $18,374 to extend this water. And I know the applicant was $47,000 to $55,000. So we got a big discrepancy here. And, you know, again, through the process, Utilities Department through DRC is still requesting that the water line be installed.
Okay. Do we have the applicant with us today?
Yes.
Michael Mazurko, 3998 Southeast 7th Avenue, Ocala, Florida, 34480.
They didn't put you on a roof or something, did they?
No, no knee surgery. So our position is 45,000 was incorrect. You guys explained that to me at the DRC meeting. But $18,000 to connect water in an affordable housing location where we're building a $112,000 house that normally has a well for about $3,500 just seems difficult to be able to make it saleable or even to get an appraisal for it. I understand, because I've gotten some calls recently to go down and see some folks at the county about these things. We've got to figure out a solution, and I'm sure that everybody's trying to figure out a solution. But to demand we hook to $18,000, to demand we connect to water at $18,000, which is 10%, greater than 10% of the value of an affordable house, seems ludicrous to us. And we would like the commission to vote in favor of putting in a well in exchange for connecting to the water.
Well, it's certainly a situation that we continue to bang our heads against the wall on, and I think we are getting closer to getting something put together in the future. Commissioners, do you have any questions, any comments? on this?
I got a comment. I feel your pain.
We know.
Yeah,
Let me
this
share
board
it.
knows.
Let me share
You want to share it? Okay.
You want us to share your story?
Commissioner Moore has had to go to
And
the
put a water
expense
line
of
in, and boy,
running
we hear
those
about
lines.
Yeah, they're going to hear about it until the day we get it resolved. And then poor Angel over there hears about it every time I see him on a daily basis.
So I do have a possible solution. Just looking at this right here, not that I'm in favor of it at the moment, Mr. Mizuko, but I do. There's four other properties that's going to benefit from these water lines at some point in time. When that happens, if the funds were expended today, you would be refunded. Commissioner Moore. So,
Sure.
Perhaps you need to put some for sale signs on your adjoining properties.
Well, no, we bought the one when they put the for sale sign.
Let me also say
Or
one
do you
other
only
thing,
own this one lot?
if I may. In that situation, we only own that one. And let me say this, if I may. I've been before you guys a few times here in the last year. I think it's no mystery that we're buying a lot of lots and building a lot of affordable housing and getting people out of rentals and making them homeowners, which is a great thing for the community. And increasing tax revenue, obviously, by real estate taxes. The challenge is we're buying them in bulk so that we can put ourselves in a position to not pay the increase in land values over time, to be able to continue to keep it affordable housing to the end buyer. But the problem is, if you buy it, I just have another one coming up in a minute from Marion Oaks. If you buy it and 6 or 9 months elapses before you go back in and try to pull a building permit, someone else could have added a line or moved the line down. And now when we did our research to purchase the lot almost a year before, we were 590 feet away, and we thought we were going to be able to put a well in. And now all of a sudden, as you get closer to developing those lots, you can't do that. And that hurts, because you buy a lot for $7,000 or $8,000, and now figuring you're going to use a $3,500 well, and 6 or 9 months later, that changes. It's not because we're trying to circumvent the system or slow down the utility growth. It is a sheer fact of economics and affordability and appraisals and housing in this community, period.
Well, I will tell you, we are on a mission to get lines run.
I hope so. We will support it.
So, okay. So, let me bring it back to the board. And let me ask this question as well. Should we provide the waiver today? It would be my hopes that we would also put a mandatory connection fee when those lines were run. There would be an automatic connection at that point.
And just so I understand it, because we would have to convey that to the potential future buyer, what right now is a connection fee for that in the current?
About $1,600.
Is it less expensive than a well, more expensive than a well?
See what Mr. Kirkman has for us.
It's $1,659.
So it's considerably less expensive than a well. So if it runs by there eventually and the current buyer is told up front at sale they have to do that, they'd have an irrigation well and they'd have to tie into the city, the county water system.
To the county water in the future.
I think that's more than fair.
Okay. Okay. So,
Right, the connection fee is, but not to run it there.
No.
No,
It'll
that's
cost
just-
them
that's just
whatever it
the-
is to get
yeah.
from the street to their house and meter and everything else, right? So
Yeah,
what's the
that'd
real,
be
what's
on
the,
the
what's the
lot.
real
what's
cost
the
to
real
put it in there?
cost?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The on-lot
What's
cost.
the real cost for them to get it there? It's probably $3,000 or $4,000.
Again, I'd maybe look to Angel in this area. I think it'd be a little less than
So,
that.
Mr. Russell, if you'll give us your name and address for the record, or
Certainly. Angel Russell, Assistant County Administrator for Public Works. The service line cost is usually between $600 and $700. It's likely that when the line is extended, we'll go ahead and put in the service line. So at that point, you're down to the meter, deposit, connection charge. So you're probably looking at overall about $2,000. Like the $1,600 plus the meter plus deposit, that sort of thing. It's probably going to be in the range of $2,000.
All right, I got a question.
absolutely.
So with this line run, we would have the potential to hook up 1, 2, 3, 4
Properties, in addition to the fifth, this one being the fifth property.
I actually count about 10.
That's true if we continue on.
All
It's
right.
in the 400.
So obviously, we can't make this happen with this particular scenario. But when we're looking at options in the future, and Mr. Mentor, this is gonna be something that you're gonna have to look into, but, I mean, in order to find a solution to the problem, I think we're also gonna have, I know we've got one solution, but when we're looking at things like this, is it possible for us to cost or partner with somebody who's in this position and then split the cost between all of the lots that the
Or
line would benefit as an assessment down the road?
Yeah, we could do an assessment project for that.
I mean, but could you do it like in that way? And when I say partner, I mean,
What always comes up, if I may, is the funding. And one of the things that we're actively pursuing right now is basically establishing the availability
Right.
charge for all these different areas that have existing services. That would be basically the catalyst fund to basically do something like this.
but you understand what I'm saying? The availability fee is gonna cover the bonding to do these projects.
That's correct.
That's the whole plan behind it. But in an instant like this, could we look into, and you call it whatever you want, but almost like an MSTU assessment for
You can
those
almost
lots?
do it like
and when
almost like a lien on those other properties once
Yeah.
like a development lien, right? Couldn't you run the line and then put a development
and
lien?
this
So
is-
once they pull a permit, they'd be forced to pay their share?
Right.
There's a difference between an assessment is something that the board, under chapter 125, the board has the statutory authority to do assessment projects, whether somebody agrees with it or not.
That's correct.
You can't just approach somebody and make somebody enter into a contract with you to put a lien on their property.
And I don't wanna I don't wanna get deep into the weeds of this right now. It's just food for thought while I'm sitting here looking at this. I, wanna stay on the task on
Yeah,
hand.
I will add this to that thought process. We're struggling to buy lots in Marion Oaks because you very seldomly can find lots in Marion Oaks that don't create $10 or $15 or $20,000 worth of additional cost to improve them. And it's hurting because we're not spending money out there to buy lots and build houses, and we're trying to find places to buy them. So I'm sure it's on the top of everybody's agenda. I don't know the solution. I'm sure you guys are working on it, but it's slowing down progress.
Right, and the problem is that in both those places that you mentioned, you have broken developments. I mean, at the end of the day, it comes from the mistakes of the 70s and 80s, where you've got
60s.
you got bankrupt
70s.
developers, right? And now you've got lots out there without infrastructure that should have had infrastructure. It makes it really stinking difficult to figure out.
Well, then we are talking about a primary springs protection area as well.
Understood.
So,
But you can also argue that the water's not half as big a deal as, I mean,
the sewer.
Septic.
except unless you're arguing with Angel. Everybody else would agree
Septic is a
that,
bigger
you
issue
know,
than
the
water.
septic is a much bigger issue than
Water.
a water well. So,
So do I have a motion to approve with a, to accept the denial,
Motion
to deny the
To
to
denial.
deny the denial?
to deny the denial, and with that will approve the well, but also with the condition that if water becomes available out there, you will hook up
Within
approve
a
the,
year,
waiver.
of 365?
That's what it should be.
within 365 days.
Okay. Madam Clerk, did you get that?
I'll second that.
We've got a motion by Commissioner Bryant, second by Commissioner Moore. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am. I'm staying.
Yep,
Not going
no
anywhere.
sense in sitting down.
Hobbling back.
So we'll go on to 14B3.
14B3 is another utility item, so I'll go ahead and handle the presentation. Again, for the record, Jody Kirkman, Environmental Services Director. In this case, again, we have where the applicant is request waiver, where the Utilities Department is request connection to sewer. In this case, do we have the error? This is not showing up.
Is it a force main?
Yes, sir, it is a
It's
force main.
main.
I move for approval of the waiver.
Second.
We got a motion by Commissioner, there's
You don't
no
even have to do it.
need.
Don't even
yeah,
have to do it?
No.
We've got a
We've seen it
motion to
before.
approve
Got
the
one of these.
waiver by Commissioner.
This is not one of our houses. This is a client's house. It's already closed on our construction loan, so it would have been a fiasco.
So we've got a motion by Commissioner Zalek to approve with a second by Commissioner Bryant for the waiver. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Commissioners.
Happy healing.
Commissioners. Yep, thank you.
Okay, 14B4, was that pulled? Yes. Okay, 14B4, so now we will go to 14C1. And I do not have anyone signed up for that one.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Good afternoon. How's everybody doing? My name is Juan Castillo, Planner 2 for Marion County Growth Services, and I am presenting case number 190201RA. It's a reasonable accommodation request for a miniature potbelly pig on R1 zoning. Staff is recommending approval with conditions. The potbelly pig is a 1-year-old potbelly pig that is used for therapeutic purposes for the applicant's daughter. The applicant has provided a letter from the doctor stating that this is indeed the primary use for the animal. The request does stem from a code case, and staff has received letters, one letter in opposition and one letter in approval.
Okay, do we have the applicant with us today? You'll please come down and give your name and address for the record, please.
Donald Goodrow, 505 Southeast 56 Ave, Ocala, Florida, 34480.
Hello, Mr. Goodrow.
Hi.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with us on this?
He's gotten a great education in local government today, right? You had to sit through all this afternoon. What do you think, sir? How do you think?
Neighbor that did the complaint.
Madam Chair, while he's here,
Yes.
I'm just concerned about the recommendation, condition number 1. It says the existing potbelly pig shall be allowed to be kept inside at the subject property. But
Yeah, it
there's
comes in the house.
there's a photograph that shows that it's outside. It says it's outside some of the time. So I just wouldn't want to have a condition that says inside and then have the neighbor say, what's he doing outside?
Right.
Understood.
Has to go outside.
The intention for that was mainly just so that the
Telling you what it
pelly
says.
pig is not running in the neighborhood, but I can clarify that.
Okay,
that
so
recommendation.
we'll get that. Thank you, Mr. Mentor.
Is the property fenced?
Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Goodrow, let me just check to see if we have anyone in the audience who'd like to speak to this. Is there anyone present who would like to speak on this topic? If not, then I'll bring it back to the board.
So is there a reason a dog or cat don't work?
We have a dog.
Okay. So I always just what's the
It's for
what's
the-
the pig for?
It was like she went to her psychiatrist and it was like a suggestion. So, and we
Has it
went.
been working? You're willing to try anything?
Putting him on the spot right
No,
now.
I ain't a doctor.
And we don't even know who it's for. It might be for his better half. He's not gonna tell you
No,
whether it
it's-
works
Oh,
or
okay.
not.
Daughter.
I'm asking.
Your daughter.
I don't understand.
I move for
What
approval.
I didn't know was like when we purchased.
You need to change
it,
that.
it's
You need to change that number 1.
They're gonna clarify the number 1. I move for
They don't
approval
tell you
with
that.
clarification
Buy
of
a
number
dog, you
1
don't
that
need
they
a
can keep the pig at the property.
Most people view pigs as farm
So I got
animals,
two
so,
different
you know.
conversations going on here.
You're welcome. You're losing control, Madam Chair.
No, she's got a motion and a second.
So I've got a motion by Commissioner Bryant to approve with clarification on condition number 1 that the pig will have the ability to go inside and outside, kept in the fenced-in yard, with a second by Commissioner Moore. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Now, you two are welcome to step outside to finish that
Bye,
conversation.
Motion to adopt the ordinance. Second.
I've got a motion by Commissioner Moore with a second by Commissioner Zalek to accept the ordinance, adopt the ordinance. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. Any further business today? I want to say thank you, everyone, and I hope you enjoy your afternoon. We are adjourned.
I just want to know how we verify that it's really only a potbelly